we would like to thank all of our sponsors for the first ever Lorcana Battle of the Bay. Each of our sponsors has contributed towards the prizing of this event to make sure it is a complete success. And to all of our volunteers, thank you for your continued support. Together, we are stronger.
It is best of 3 here in the top cut. The highest seed will be able to go first twice, I do believe. But we're ready for the top 8 Battle of the Bay here in California, 7:30 p.m. local time. The time in London, I don't know, it's maybe like 3:30 a.m. And let me tell you, it feels like it. The jet lag has hit me, it's hit me kind of hard, but I'm about to have a second wind as the top 8 is beginning. Both players shuffling up and getting ready to begin. And again, thank you everyone for sticking with us here in the chat. Hope you're excited for the top 8 here at the Battle of the Bay. Don't have deck lists handy or anything like that, but definitely stay tuned to my YouTube page where things will be getting posted after the tournament, going through all the deck lists. Also, Ink decks is usually a good place to go. Here we go. Highest seed for this one. Let me see if I can work that out. We'll let you know. But it is going to be Andrew starting things off here with the Chernobog's, and Daniel's going to respond with the Diablo. So both players starting off with those Amythst 1-drops. Mr. Smee going to come through then for Daniel, who is going first in game number 1. A real classic battle, Amethyst Steel versus Amethyst Emeralds. Ursula's going to come in, and that is going to be a big moment. Whenever you play an Ursula down and it misses, you feel pretty awful. There were a few song cards on offer, potentially. Frenzy on the other side, but in particular that, and then along came Zeus being uninkable is what Andrew was hoping to see, but does not. Diablo also, I thought it didn't quest, but it looks like it will be questing for 1. First law of this top 8 goes for Andrew. But it is now, oh no, it's actually 1 law apiece because the Chernobog's followers quested the previous turn, just hadn't been updated there. So the Ursula, of course, saw the hand, which included a couple of foxes. It is going to be one of the foxes into the Inkwell, and it's going to be the Surfer Tink, as she's now known in the community. The Tink Fast Flyer, 1/3 stat line at quest for 2. And that Tinkerbell is a pretty good card within its own right, but in this deck in particular, it's representing the threat of the giant Tink Shift. Absolutely extraordinary combo, because it's a card you're happy to quest with, but you're also very happy to shift with, and it puts your opponent in a really awkward spot. The Chernobog's followers will crest to draw, and play will pass on over. That's me. He's going to, of course, take 1 damage, because I don't believe the Tinkerbell is a captain. I do not believe she's a captain, but I've been wrong before. It turns out she is not a captain, confirmed. So on the other side of the board, it's Diablo and Ursula. Just make sure everything's good and dandy here. We'll let you know what's going on in just a moment. Again, we really appreciate you all being here. Lots of people working really hard behind the scenes to bring you this tournament here from the Bay Area in California. We are continuing, and it's going to be our Amethyst Emerald player inking up to 3. They went second this game, of course. It will be the 1-cost Diablo into the Inkwell, and in comes Kit Cloud Kicker. See you later, Tinkerbell. Big moment in this game. The Tinkerbell shift threat is really, really significant. I mean, you just imagine the board state of a giant Tink. Often, if there's a giant Tink on one side of the board, the opponent is just not able to quest. And that 3-cost Tink is almost representing that same kind of power level. Just the threat of the shift Tink being able to rush in and challenge and deal with maybe 3 characters in a single turn on this kind of board. Queen's Castle will be inked. Just 2 copies of that in the deck for Daniel. So a pretty significant decision to ink it. Smee will quest for 2. And with the 4 ink, well, it looks like it's 3 ink. Is Tink coming back down into the mix? It's going to be the Fox Bouncing the Smee, Fox can of course challenge either Diablo or Ursula. Goes for Ursula in this case. 1 ink still to spare, and it will be a Churnabox followers. Of course, that Tink still in the hand. Play passes back on over to Emerald Amethyst. We will get that lore counter on the screen for you as soon as possible. Not big lore counts at the moment. I think it's 1 lore apiece. It's going to be Go-Go Tamago into the Inkwell. Kick Cloud Kicker, going to trade for the Fox. Diablo is ready to quest still, with 4 ink still to spend. And it is going to be the Genie. When Genie enters play, draw a card. And that card will be drawn. I thought for a second they might forget. And something to look out for on these Amethyst mirrors is the Genie against Genie on Elsa combo. It's something we talked about with Ed earlier on. And looking at the deck lists, there is no Elsa in the deck for Daniel. And Avryn does have Elsa. So that's definitely a big advantage here for our Emerald Amethyst player, Andrew. They do have the Elsas. Elsa Genie can combine to take out an opponent Genie. And there we do see the Genie. So Elsa right about now could be a huge moment. My first game of set 6, I played a Genie up against my opponent's Genie, and then Elsa came through. And it was at that moment I vowed never to play Amethyst without Elsa again this set. Let's see if that Elsa is going to come through at the right moment here. 5 cards in hand. Is one of them Elsa? If Elsa is in there, Genie can be exerted. Genie and Elsa combine to take out the opponent's Genie. And it leaves you in a really good spot. Churnabox followers and Robin Hood, the other cards down on the board here for Daniel as it stands. Andrew's going to ink the crab. It's not the card of dreams, but a Peter Pan Shadow Finder can rush in still and deal with the Churnabox. 6 lore to 4 as it stands. Well, that Genie is going to tie things up. 6 lore apiece. This Elsa would have been a real game changer. And the tension in the room is pretty palpable now this top 8 started. There's lots of people here in the building watching the action unfold. It's going to be a second Genie. Daniel will draw for that Genie, of course. And then Genie will quest. Had the option, of course, of challenging Peter Pan. In fact, it's not going to quest, it's going to sing, and then along came Zeus. That is a great way of dealing with an opponent's Genie, because suddenly the Genie battle is very much in favor of Daniel. Without that Elsa that I was anticipating. And if you can get these evasive threats stuck down on the board in this kind of matchup, you're in a really, really good spot. Double Genie and Robin Hood on the board. Of course, Daniel did go first in this first game here. It's a best of 3. Crab comes through. Fox plus Crab combo, so this Fox can challenge for 7. Well, it can, but it only challenges for 2. Taking out Robin Hood. 6 lore to 7 in favor of the double Genie player. Surely not a third Genie. It's going to be Friends, hard cast. 2 cards drawn. Diablo into the Inkwell. It's going to be another Tink. Might actually be the same Tink we saw earlier on. 3 evasives down on the board for our Amethyst Steel player. Is there an Elsa to help contend with these? Elsa at this moment in time just not doing that much though without that other evasive character on the board. It is the evasive show right now for Daniel, making use of going first by getting some really aggressive questing through into the mix. Rabbit's going to come through. Card drawn. $11 lore to 6. Nothing to challenge for the Fox with that evasive board, so it's going to quest for 1. Bridging the gap now, 11 lore to 7. Still some ink to spend this turn. Here's going to be a Fox, bouncing back that Rabbit. And a key moment in this game, it feels like if there's a third Genie enters the board, that's 4 evasives. Diablo and Churnabox, just for good measure. No threat of be prepared when playing against Emerald Amethyst, of course. Big questing comes through. It's going to be the Rabbit for 4. Still perhaps searching for an Elsa. But again, just a real lack of evasive cards It's going to be the quest, and it's going to be Amythst Steel. Evasive Amythst Steel taking game number 1 in this best of 3 top 8. That was the Genie show right there. But again, there was that turn where a Elsa for the Emerald Amethyst player, and they do play Elsa, could have changed everything. The Genie and Elsa could have combined to take out the opponent's Genie, but it was nowhere to be seen when it mattered most. Player's going to shuffle up and get ready for game number 2 in this best of 3. Appreciate you all being here, everybody. This is the Battle of the Bay, California. Top 8. Around 130 players participating today, and only 8 are left. Here we go, game number 2. It will be Emerald Amethyst to kick this one off. It was Amethyst Steel that went first in game number 1. So going to be interesting to see how the different side of the die roll or the coin flip is going to affect this one. It is open deck list, remember, but the player's able to study the deck before the start of the game. So at this point, there's maybe some things they're forgetting about. It's definitely part of the skill, and it's been a long old day here in California. The main event started 10.5 hours ago. I've been here for around 12 hours at this point. Amythst Steel mid-range is pretty good fare into everything except Ruby Sapphire. Yeah, the version of Amethyst Steel that I've been playing, that is Moyen's list for the EU versus NA, is actually also very good into Ruby Sapphire with the 1-cost Maleficence, the Goats, and the White Rose. Having said that, that style of deck is going to struggle against Daniel's list with the Tinkerbell, for example. Here we go. It will be Emerald Amethyst going first, and Clarabelle's going to be inked. And it's not Clarabelle, it's a Merfolk. Curse Merfolk on turn 1, always threatening, but there is the potential with a Fire the Cannons to respond. It's going to be a Chernabog's Followers. Going to check, actually, you would imagine there's some Fire the Cannons. There is, I've got the wrong list there, 1 second. Is there any Fire the Cannons? There actually is not any, there is 3 Fire the Cannons for Daniel. Yeah, that makes sense. 3 copies of Fire the Cannons, 1 copy of Twin Fire, which is this kind of double Fire the Cannons. Like Twin Fire on this board, you discard a card from hand and you're able to deal with both Merfolk and Banzai. It could be incredible. Chernabog's Followers is going to quest, or is it? No, it's actually going to challenge the Curse Merfolk, discarding the very enchanted, and then along came Zeus, and for 2, it's going to be a Smee. Play passes back on over to Andrew. And it's going to be a quest of Banzai. And I guess that's Peter Pan that rushed in there. I was just checking the list. Smee is still standing strong. 4 Law to 0. Of course, Emerald Amethyst going first in this one, so Amethyst Steel can ink this turn to get up to 3. Smee's going to challenge the Banzai. This is what you're often forced to do when going second. You're the one challenging while your opponent gets to quest. Diablo inked, and in comes the Surfer Tink. We saw in the last game, Cloud Kicker dealing with this Tinkerbell. Is that an option again? It's going to be Genie. This Genie will have Rush as well because of the Peter Pan Shadow Finder. But of course, nothing to challenge right now. But it is a real battle of evasives right now. We saw in the last game the evasive overload from Amethyst Steel, but this time it looks like Andrew looking to get that evasive board with the Peter Pan and the Genie. Tinkerbell could challenge Peter Pan and it would stick around on the board. Could we ever see a Shift Tink? We don't. It's a Goat instead. 1 Law now on the board. Tinkerbell could quest, could challenge this Peter Pan as well. decides to do nothing at all, perhaps wanting to shift on this card down the line. So Genie and Peter Pan between them quest for 3 up to 8, can go to 5 ink. Of course, an Elsa would be an interesting proposition to take out the Tink. It's going to be Ursula inked, and it is Elsa available. But will that be the option? Do you want to be careful now that the building's become a lot more quiet? Not to give anything away. It's going to be Genie that comes through. Card drawn. It's a board full of evasives and a good old-fashioned goat. Again, this Genie does have Rush, thanks to Peter Pan's Shadow Finder, but nothing to challenge. Questing with Peter Pan and Genie up to 8. 8 lore to 1. The gap is growing. The problem, of course, of shifting in Tink here is there'll be nothing to challenge as everything's evasive. It would deal, though, with the Peter Pan Shadow Finder, with those 2 damage counters on it. Go. It's going to sing. And then along came Zeus, and then the Genie has been zapped and dealt with for 4. It's going to be the shift Tink. So 1 damage dealt to both, and then the Tink will quest. Pretty nice turn. Stabilizing the board, but these evasives are still going to be pretty difficult to deal with. Genie can quest up to 10. Something like a crab could provide the opportunity to trade the Tinkerbell out as well. But you might just be wanting to quest with the Genie at this point. Continue to quest, tick away at that lore. Amythst still winning game 1 while going first. Emerald Amythst looking to tie the series up 1-1. It is going to be the Elsa, and it's just not that impressive at this moment. It can rush in and deal 2 damage to the goat, or the Tink if so desired. But you might just want to leave it as it is. Safe and sound and protected with no damage on it. It is another evasive card that quests for 1 after all. But definitely not the ideal use for Elsa. We saw in the last game there was that 1 turn where Elsa would have been potentially game-winning. But here, Elsa coming at the wrong time, it feels like. 4 ink. Is it another Genie? It's a rabbit this time. Goat can't challenge Genie, of course, because it's evasive, but it can certainly zap it. And then along came Zeus, being sung by the goat, and Tinkerbell questing for 2 again. The gap is being closed. 10 lore to 5. This Elsa is still an evasive threat. Only quest for 1. Go into the Inqua, an expensive ink, no doubt. But there comes Clarabelle for 7. Can Clarabelle draw some cards here for Andrew? Elsa is going to quest for 1 and play passes on over to Daniel. Clarabelle will not be drawing any cards, it seems. It's a Genie. Not a bad way to spend 4 ink. And Robin Hood Enchanted inked. 1 ink available. Tink, Goat will quest up to 8. The rabbit is still ready and waiting also. Quest up to 9. So 9 lore to 11. Card drawn for Emerald Amythst. There's 1 card in hand for Daniel on Amethyst Steel. Andrew here will challenge the Tinkerbell with Clarabelle. Taking it out and remaining on the board. Slowing the game down a bit at this moment in time to try and gain back that board control which slipped away from them. It's going to be Peter Pan Shadow Finder with Rush and Evasive for 3. 4 ink available. Elsa and Peter Pan can both challenge this turn. Peter Pan's going to challenge the rabbit. Go to Margot comes through. 2 ink it costs to play it, 2 ink for its ability, and it's going to be 2 lore gained, 2 damage counters on that rabbit. So Gogo Tomago gaining a lore for each damage counter on the rabbit. And that, guess what, is another evasive. And it's got rush because of the Peter Pan Shadow Finder. Elsa can quest. Really fascinating battle here. The Amethyst evasive mirrors seem like a bit of a theme for the Azure at Sea meta. It's going to be a quest with the Elsa for 1. 6 lore away. But that Clarabelle is going to draw a couple of cards as well for Andrew. The Clarabelle's been a real difference maker, trading out that Tink while remaining on the board and now drawing 2 cards. 9 lore to 14. 3 cards in hand here. Two evasives on the side of the board here for Andrew, but that Clarabelle is, of course, not evasive. 5/6 body, I believe it is on Clarabelle, so 2 more damage needed. Genie is going to exert, and so is the goat, and it's going to be a double quest up to 12. Closing the gap to just 2 lore now. With a goat on board, of course, as well, so that can climb up very, very quickly. 3 ink spent on a fox, suddenly 13 lore available. Oh, sorry, 13 lore on the door. Fox can rush in as well, of course. Can't challenge Elsa or Peter Pan because of the evasive tag, but can certainly trade for Clarabelle, and that is exactly what happens. Clarabelle has been dealt with, but really good value off the Clarabelle, drawing 2 cards and trading for a Tinkerbell and a Fox. 2 ink still to work with. Goat in hand as well as another card. There was an Enchanted there getting inked. I think it might have been Tink. Goat still in hand. And perhaps one other card. It is a crab. But it's back on over to Andrew, and it's very close to the end of this one. Andrew can quest up to 16. Has the option of trading out the Genie instead with the Elsa and the Peter Pan. If they want to slow the game down here. It's another Elsa. Hello. Elsa's going to exert the crab. And it's going to be Elsa and Elsa challenging into the Genie. This is going to mean that the Peter Pan is free to quest and stick around on the board. It's going to be Banzai for 2, Peter Pan questing up to 15, and they are threatening to win next turn. So Daniel has to remove something from the board here, or this will be Andrew's game 2. We know they have a goat in hand, but what did they draw into? 3 evasives, all exerted for Andrew. That Banzai's ready and waiting. It's a scoop, and we go to game 3. Each player, when going first, has taken it, but it's been pretty tight in both games. And I think we saw in that game 1 the lack of Elsa for Andrew. That's going to be the key card for them when going second. Taking out their opponent's Genie, trying to equalize the board around turn 5. Going to be really, really fascinating to see how this third and final game plays out in this top 8 game here at the Battle of the Bay in California. And we can see the lists on the screen here. Big shout out to the production team. Thank you very much for that. This is Andrew's list. Again, it's open deck lists. Single copy of that Maleficent Staff, as mentioned. That could be something to look out for. I think particularly important in this matchup is that Elsa with Rush. The Ursula Sea Witch Queen, single copy of that could also be interesting. I have to say, the one thing I don't like about these Emerald Amethyst lists in general is the Clarabelles. We did see the Clarabelle perform quite well there, but I don't know, I'm unconvinced about this 1-drop Clarabelle in these decks, to be honest. Everyone plays them, but I've never quite understood why. But that's just my opinion. The White Rose, a new addition in there. And here's Daniel's list. A very interesting setup without Doc. does play rabbit, as well as the snakes and the fox. 2 rabbits, 4 genies. Twin fire, I think a really fascinating addition as well. But here we go, the mulligans are taking place. Amethyst Steel will be going first. And it's going to be Amethyst Emerald looking to stabilize the board as quickly as possible in what turns out so far to be the Battle of the Evasives here at the Battle of the Bay in California. 8 p.m. local time. The players about 11 hours into their tournament run. The decks have been shuffled. The decks have been cut. California, make some noise. Oh, that worked. That's cool. I look very tired. I am tired. That's why. Here we go. Go into the inkwell. Robin Hood down on the board. It's going to be Crab, but no turn 1 play for Andrew. Not the start you're looking for when trying to mount the comeback when going second. Clarabelle, Curse, Merfolk are the 1-cost cards in their deck, as well as that 1-cost Diablo. So there's 10 1-drops, but doesn't find one. Robin Hood will quest for 1 for the first lore of this game, number 3. But no turn 2 at least. Interesting early game. It's going to be the Ursula. Will Ursula hit? It certainly will. See you later. And then along came Zeus. We saw the Ursula come through on turn 2 from Andrew in game 1, and it missed, and it felt terrible. Well, that feels brilliant. Discarding, and then along came Zeus, which has been a real thorn in their side. Genie singing Zeus to deal with Genie was a real highlight of game 1. Also getting that information over the rest of the cards in hand is crucial. Robin Hood ready and waiting. It's going to be 3 ink spent on this Surfer Tink, the fast flyer. No quest from Robin Hood. Really, really interesting. It is 1 lore to nothing, by the way. That just needs to get updated. That quest came through on turn 2 from Robin Hood. Has now been updated. Ursula into the inkwell. 3 ink to spend. It's going to be Kit Cloud Kicker. See you later, Tinkerbell. Bounce back to hand, and Ursula's going to quest for 1. Interesting that this Robin Hood didn't quest in the previous turn. Perhaps fearing a fox rushing in and trading favorably. Perhaps also suggesting that there might be a shift option. That Surfer Tink will be inked, and in comes a rabbit. Robin Hood still ready and waiting. Gonna just continue to do nothing. So very slow start to this game, which I have to say probably favors the player going second in general. Well, that's not very slow because the Genie is now in the building. Drawing a card, it's that evasive 2/4 body which can quest for 2. Of course, Rabbit Singing Zeus would deal with Genie so efficiently, but the Ursula discarding that Zeus on turn 2. Of course, another one could have been drawn by this point, especially with the Rabbit. There is 4 in the deck. That would be a big moment indeed. Is going to be Zeus, found out of nowhere. Another lightning bolt comes through, cleans up the Genie. Rabbit Singing Zeus onto Genie, a big moment in this game. And that's a big moment too. The Fox bouncing back the Rabbit, drawing an extra card, and now rushing in to deal with that Kit. And it's actually going to deal with Ursula, leaving Kit on the board. Robin Hood still ready and waiting, and Robin Hood finally does something and trades for a Kit. 1 ink still to spare. Crab brings it up to 2 ink, but won't be spent. 3 lore to 1. So the player going first trailing at this stage, but that was a big turn indeed. It's going to be the fox into the inkwell, 5 ink to spend. $5 ink to spend. 2 of that will be spent on a Maleficent Staff has entered the board. A really interesting option in this Amethyst mirror. Whenever one of your opponent's cards, items or locations is removed from the board and added to their hand, in other words, bounced from the board to their hand, during their turn, no, during your turn, or just whenever? I'm trying to think. I think whenever. Yeah, it is whenever. Gain a law. So if you use Cloud Kicker, you gain 1 law. If your opponent uses a fox and bounces something back, you gain 1 law. It can be really, really powerful. It's going to be the Banzai as well, so I feel like this is a pretty good turn. Maleficent Staff, in what seems to be a longer game here, could be very, very powerful. And the kind of evasive battles we saw in game 1 and 2, it might have been too slow, but considering the law count right now, this staff, it could put in some big work. It's going to be Tinkerbell and the Fire the Cannons. That is efficient. Banzai costs 2 to play, and Fire the Cannons deals with it for just 1 before any law can be gained. Another card inked. It was another very fancy enchanted. It might have been a Tink. Ed is in the top 8, playing right now. Not sure what the score is on that one. Genie's going to come through and draw a card. An evasive on each side of the board now. Tinkerbell and Genie. It's going to be the White Rose inked, and play passes on over to the Amethyst Steel player, Daniel. 4 ink on a rabbit, probably the same rabbit we've seen bounce back not too long ago. 1 ink for a 1-cost Diablo. And it is going to be a quest for 3. Finally taking the lead here, Daniel. 5 law to 3. Don't forget about that Maleficent Staff in play as well. But this is the kind of turn where an Elsa could make a real difference. It's going to be a Crab plus Genie. That's not bad either. Crab plus Genie. The evasive trade. Tinkerbell taken out by the Genie. 4 ink, I think that is still to spare. Might be 3, but could ink to go to 4. At the moment, it really is just a battle for board control, but also you have to remember the amount of cards that you have in hand. The longer the game goes on, that is a resource which each player is trying to balance as well. And the Peter Pan is going to rush in and trade for the fox. And it is now back on over to Daniel here. Rabbit questing there. 6 law to 3. It is going to be a snake. But look at that. 1 law gained by Andrew, thanks to the Maleficent Staff. Whenever a card is bounced back to the opponent's hand, gain a law. Really coming in clutch in this Amethyst mirror. Really interesting tech card, just 1 copy of it in the deck. Rabbit is played back down. But the rabbit is putting in some serious work as well. This is 1 rabbit we've seen bouncing back and forth, I think 3 times now. And therefore, the card advantage in terms of cards in hand is very much in favor of Daniel, I believe. Crab is going to take out Diablo. When Diablo is banished, a card is drawn. Genie, the only evasive currently on the board. Maleficent Staff is still there as well, don't forget. I'm not calling the cards in hand just because the players might be able to hear me, but you can obviously see what's going on in hand if you look at these bottom cameras. I'm not going to comment on those just in case the players are able to hear me with how quiet the building is now compared to earlier. But Elsa for 5. It can rush in and exert a character. It's going to be the rabbit that's exerted, and there is now the option of challenging the rabbit with both Genie and Elsa. Alternatively, you might just want to quest with Genie for 2. Interesting decision. We've seen that rabbit bouncing back and forth. Denying the potential bounce of that rabbit could be an interesting option. 5 ink was spent on this Elsa, and Elsa will challenge the rabbit. But will the genie finish the job, or will the genie instead quest? 7 lore to 4 as it stands. Genie is going to quest up to 6. And play passes back on over now to Daniel, who has an abundance of cards in hand, thanks to that rabbit, thanks to that 1-cost Diablo. And there's always the possibility one of those cards is And Then Along Came Zeus, which has been the difference maker for Daniel. And it happens. The third one that they've drawn this game. 1 was discarded. 2 have been sung by a rabbit to deal with a genie. Speaking of genie, in comes a genie. 0 ink was spent on that Zeus, of course. 4 ink spent on genie. 3 ink still remaining. The snake will quest. It's now 8 lore to 6. It's going to be 2 ink spent. Oh, maybe not. Looks like it might be 3 ink spent instead. On a fox, bouncing back the rabbit, drawing a card. But because of that Maleficent Staff, there's also a lore gain for Andrew. The second lore gained by Andrew. Just wondering, going back to that previous turn with the Elsa, for Andrew, if it was the most efficient play they had. They went for the Elsa. They challenged the rabbit, which then got bounced back. It didn't really do a lot of anything. Was that the turn where they just lost a little bit too much tempo? The Elsa at the wrong time. Well, Elsa's going to quest. It's now 8 lore apiece. 8 all. 3 cards in hand for Andrew. 1 of which is a fox. The fox can rush in. And the fox does rush in, and in comes Ursula as well. And that is a pretty scary hand. Twin Fire, Rabbit, Enchanted Tinkerbell, and a fox, just for good measure. It really has been the story of And Then Along Came Zeus in this one. Singing it with that rabbit to deal with the opponent's genie twice. Genie is going to quest for 2. I think. Tink comes through, 1 damage dealt to Ursula. And just for good measure, Twin Fire comes through, 2-cost fire the cannons. Twin Fire, you have the option of using its secondary ability, which is discard a card and deal 2 more damage to a different character. But in this case, it was just played as a 2-cost fire the cannons, like a baboon. Elsa's going to come through. It's going to exert Tink, I suppose. But the battle of the evasives, you can deal with the genie, but there's just no other evasive to follow it up. I identified Elsa maybe as being a potential difference maker, but the Elsas just seemingly have come at the wrong time here. It's been the Zeus that's been the difference maker, as it turns out. 4 ink, in comes the rabbit, and the rabbit has also been a bit of a difference maker in this one. Bouncing back and forth so many times. 2 copies of rabbit, 4 copies of genie in the deck. And this, you can see why there's rabbits. They've just put in so much work. And here comes the Surfer Tink and a Mr. Smee looking to close things out. 14 lore to 8 right now. Lots of people here at the venue watching the action very closely. And they think it might be all over. But does Andrew have something up their sleeve? That genie has 2 damage counters on it already, so it can be taken out by Elsa and will be. Elsa with 4 damage counters on her is standing tall for now. Tink's questing for 2 each, as does Smee and the rabbit, so 7 lore available. So 2 characters need to be gotten rid of here or it's over. to get rid of at least 2 characters. And they're all quite strong and ready and difficult to deal with. That is the game. It was the battle of Amethyst and Emerald, or sorry, Steel and Emerald. Maleficent Staff put in some work, but it just wasn't enough. Amethyst Steel comes out on top. It did get to go first twice, let's not forget. But it really was the power of, and then along came Zeus. You can see on the screen we have a breakdown of the meta share of the tournament here, Battle of the Bay, around 130 players. The most popular deck of the weekend was Amber Steel Songs. Ruby Amethyst in at second place, and quite surprisingly to many, Amethyst Steel, the 3rd most popular deck in the meta game here at Battle of the Bay. I have to say, Battle of the Bay, classy pick. I think Amethyst Steel is a great deck. You guys know me, I do love a bit of Amethyst Steel. Emerald Steel, the 4th most represented. Emerald Amethyst in at 5th. Oh no, Ruby Sapphire is there as well. Ruby Sapphire actually the 2nd most represented. Ruby Amethyst is the 3rd, Amethyst Steel is the 4th, Emerald Steel the 5th, and then Emerald Amethyst as the 6th. Just to tell you about some of the other, here you go, the top 8. 2 Amber Steel, 2 Ruby Amethyst, 2 Amethyst Steel, 1 Emerald Steel, 1 Emerald Amethyst. Emerald Amethyst is now out. We just saw that. We know at least 1 Amethyst Steel player has made it through. But interesting to see, no Ruby Sapphire, despite being a pretty popular deck here today. No Ruby Sapphire making it through to the top 8. It was the 2nd most represented deck in the tournament, but nowhere to be seen. And if you look at the decks which made the top, it's not that unsurprising. I think Amber Steel, a tricky matchup for Ruby Sapphire. Amber Steel can easily go 1-1 with that deck though. I think Amber Steel is usually going 1-1 with Ruby Sapphire. But all these other decks, very, very difficult. These Amethyst decks, very speedy. Emerald Steel, not the speediest, but a pretty even matchup often with Ruby Sapphire. But yeah, it's interesting to see. I think Amethyst Steel and Emerald Amethyst in particular looking like 2 of the biggest winners of the new set so far. It is early days. That was the first top 8 game. And it was a very, very fun one. I imagine some of the other players will be still playing their games because it was a pretty speedy top 8 game. But then, of course, we've still got our top 4. And Ed, Disney Lorcana Challenge champion, is still in the top 8 playing Ruby Amethyst. It'll be interesting to see if they're able to come out on top of their match.